Emotions are a normal and inevitable part of our daily lives. The way we perceive the things around us influences our emotional responses. These emotional responses are generated by a very primitive part of the brain called as the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for the fight or flight responses when we are confronted with a threat. A fight response is when we directly go ahead and attack the threat or confront that threat, or we directly address that threat. The flight response is when we run away from that threat, when we evade that threat or we avoid that threat. And this threat doesn't really have to be something real, very material right in front of you. It can be something that we perceive to be a threat, that we imagine to be a threat, that we think could be a threat. These explain different fears. So amygdala mainly focuses on fear, because fear helped human beings to survive as a species during the early stages of human evolution. However, that does not mean that fear was the only emotion generated by the amygdala. There were other emotions also. All the emotions that led to a comfortable feeling meant that it is beneficial for the survival, and all the emotions that was connected to an uncomfortable feeling meant that it was a threat to the survival. So this is how they differentiated between what is a threat and what is a benefit for survival. During the early stages of human evolution, the factors that the human beings were confronted with were predators, natural calamities, change of weather. All this have to be interpreted by the human being to be of benefit to their survival or a threat to their survival. So this part of the brain that developed early on helped the human beings to make this decision and take the correct decision to ensure the survival of themselves and their species. Over the years, the amygdala, let us call it the emotional brain, just for the sake of our understanding, started developing extensions of its own. And these extensions started to perform logical and rational functions of the brain, like rational thinking and problem solving, logical thinking. This happened mainly because there were changes in the environment that the human beings were put, changes in terms of the kind of predators that they were facing, the kind of climate that they were facing, all the environment factors. So to adapt to these changes and ensure that they still survive, the rational brain started to develop, and the human beings started to make much more rational and logical decisions and started to solve much more complex problems than previously they used to solve. So this led to the development of a rational part of the brain, which is an extension of the emotional part of the brain. Now, does this mean that the emotional brain is a lot stronger? Does this mean that we are a slave to our emotions? Are we imprisoned in the unbreakable bars of emotions within the cage of our mind? The answer is a resounding no, because the rational part of the brain has developed to a point where we can override the strong emotional functions. How do we override the strong emotional functions? By controlling and redirecting the emotional expressions or the emotional responses. This process of controlling and redirecting the emotional expression in a much more healthier way rather than a destructive way is called emotional regulation. And when you say you are providing emotional support to a person, basically you are helping the person to regulate their emotion. You are helping the person to express their emotions in a healthy way. So this is emotional regulation and emotional support, and a brief idea of how emotions developed and how it helped the human beings to survive for a long time. Therefore, emotions are still a very important part of our daily lives, and they also need to be regulated so that we have a good mental health. Thank you.